Welcome to the Leafy podcast, helping real estate investors and entrepreneurs grow.
Let's start the show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Leafy Podcast. I'm the podcast manager, Tammy Geerling. Thank you so much for being here today. We have a really amazing program planned for you today, an excellent guest. So first, I'd like to introduce our hosts. That would be Brian Price and Jennifer Gregoric, and both of them are the CEO and COO of Leafy Legal Services. So thank you both so much for being here, and I'll go ahead and hand it over to you so you can get started with our guest.
Well, today we have an author, the author of Teaching Kids to Buy Stocks, Stories and Lessons for Grown-Ups. It's this really super cool book written by a certified financial planner who's married to a financial planner, and they have 4 kids and great stories. He's got really great stories, and you can really understand it. So he's able to break down the concepts of his book, very complicated concepts, to where they're understandable for kids. And he has got a great story about losing $100,000 in junior high from a hot tip. So I can't wait to find out a lot more about that. Anyway, please welcome the author, JJ Wenrich, of Teaching Kids to Buy Stocks, Stories and Lessons for Grown-Ups. Welcome, JJ.
Hey, JJ.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. How are you doing today?
Oh, we're doing good. Getting to talk to you. We're getting to talk to you. So, okay, lead off. It's not, you didn't actually lose $100,000 like real American USD cash. It was a thing that y'all were doing in school, right? To teach you about stocks?
Yeah, this would have been back in 7th grade, and I went to school and grew up in the middle of Kansas, but still had great teachers out in the country. And my 7th grade teacher, she brought a stockbroker out to talk to us about the stock market and explain here's the basics. And part of that was they enrolled us in a game that the Kansas State University puts on to help students learn about the stock market. And she put us into teams, and our team got off to a great start. We were one of the top teams in the state in the first couple of weeks of the contest. And then I got a hot stock tip from my mom's boss, who was a doctor, who knows where he got his hot stock tip from. But that's when we saw our rankings steadily drop as that pick it detracted from our performance, and that it knocked us out of the top 10 and out of the rankings.
No, womp womp. Thanks a lot, Doc, right?
Yeah. That's the first lesson in life, of beware of the hot tip.
That's right. That's right. Luckily, you learned that with fake money versus something real and as an adult.
Because you actually went to an expert and you asked his advice, and he said they have inventory problems, but you didn't listen to him. You still went with your hot tip, right? That's really the bigger lesson. Yeah.
Oh, exactly. I'm glad you brought that up, because the way the story went is, so the stockbroker had come out and explained to our class the basics of the market. And then gives us the fake money to go crazy with. And I got that tip from my mom's boss, and my teacher goes, well, let's go to the principal's office and call him. Let's call the stockbroker and see what he thinks.
Smart. Yeah.
And so I did the walk to the principal's office that I knew far too well. And this time it was actually for productive reasons. And yeah, the company was Michael's Stores. It's arts and crafts. And I don't know if they're still traded.
Yeah, I remember Michael's, yeah.
Yeah. But I could see why he said maybe they had inventory problems, because I could see a lot of that stuff looks like it's been there a while, been on the shelf.
Dusty and everything. Yeah, I've been to Michael's. I love those types of stores. I can never do anything. I go there and I get all like, yay! And I buy all this stuff. And when it comes back, it looks like it was done by kindergartners who had too much sugar and half of it's broken. And I'm like, Merry Christmas. Yeah. It's all bad.
Yeah, you look at the picture of what it's supposed to look like versus yours, and
nailed it. Yeah. So what inspired you first to write your book?
Yeah, no, the inspiration of the book came from a couple of things, I'd say. From one, as my kids grew up, I'd started talking to them about just the basics of money initially when they were pretty little. And, that's maybe one of the lessons I try to teach folks is just start by talking to your kids about money, the simplest things you can think of as you're going through your life. And so I had done that with my kids, and eventually that turned into teaching them a little bit more and a little bit more. And as I started to teach them concepts about the stock market and individual stocks, I was pretty impressed with how well they retained it. And they'd say things back to me that, wow, that's very profound. And also in my career, I was working with financial advisors. Financial advisors were my clients. And so I was having conversations all the time with financial professionals, but also with their clients. And I'd find myself sometimes quoting things that my kids had said, just because sometimes kids say things so simply that it really helped simplify things for grown-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was one inspiration, is just seeing how well they took to a lot of the lessons. But also I was sharing the things I was doing with my kids on social media, with my personal network, but also professionally with my clients and with folks that I met with on a day-to-day basis. I'd say, you wouldn't believe, what we've been doing. It's been great, and they're really picking it up.
Mm-hmm. So
when I saw those financial professionals using those lessons with their kids and saying, hey, it's actually working pretty good, I thought, I should put something together with this. And then a conversation with a close friend, that idea turned into, maybe let's start with writing a book. And that's what inspired me, is just seeing other people using things I talked about. Nothing complicated. In fact, it's the simplicity that I think that helped folks. And that's what gave me the idea to let's write a book so that we have this in a little more formal way to share it.
Yeah. And you eventually got your kids involved in the stock market, right? Is that how I put it correct?
Yeah.
So how did that go? Did you write the book before were you teaching them and then got them in the stock market and then wrote the book, or how did that kind of all come together?
Yeah, no, I wrote the book after the fact. The book actually just came out this year.
Oh, okay.
The book goes through kind of a story of my kids over the last 12 years, and starts when they were 3, 4, 5, and right now they're 12, 11, 12, 13, 14.
Nice.
So
you started early then. That's really early. So how do you start a kid out at 3, 4, and 5 on something as complicated as the stock market?
You don't start with the stock market. You start with, hey, I want this cookie, or I want this candy bar. And you explain, well, that costs 75 cents. And you start to just have them understand the concept of, maybe you show kids money, you show them the coins and the bills and things, but when they start to learn that, we exchange that for something that's much better than coins and bills, and that might be candy and toys. You just start to just have conversations about money as you go through life.
Yeah.
And the way we got from that point A to the kids actually both doing some of the play money investing, like I had done when I was young and even older, to actual putting some of their own money into the market. It took years to get through that, but it all started with kind of like, how do you learn to run? Well, it starts by crawling. Well, it started with talking about a candy bar is 75 cents.
Yeah.
And then you eventually learn that, okay, this grocery store here is selling these candy bars to us. They're trying to make money. They're probably paying less than 75 cents, or at least I hope they are.
Yeah.
Well, how do we get the cheap candy?
Dollar store.
Yeah.
So that brings a funny story, because I wanted to hear how they reacted, because I did read that part of it, and you said, okay, if you can save $500, I'll match you $500, and then you'll have $1,000. However, you weren't actually going to give, you didn't tell them that you weren't going to give them $500. You were actually going to use that $500 that you were matching for the stocks. And I love the way you wrote it, where your wife kind of asked, well, do they know this? And you're like, well, no, I haven't told them yet. And there was silence. So, as, dealing with kids, as all parents do, how did they take that when you stated that? How did that roll out?
Yeah, so the way the story went is I'd seen them just spending their money on anything they could, and wanted to get them to save. That's the goal, is to challenge them to save. And so I said, if you'll save the $500, I'll match it. And then my wife calls me out, says, I don't know that you can really just give kids $1,000, to just run with. And so eventually I told them, no, we're going to match it into a stock. And they say, well, what's a stock? Well, by the time you say $500 up, you'll know. And that gave me some time. And then eventually when I did tell them that, they were young enough that I could almost tell them anything when they were, 6, 7, 8. When they're in those younger ages, they think that you're Superman, and they just went with the flow. Like, oh, okay, that's cool. If I told them now, it might be rough. They've gotten older and wiser, so it might be a different story. In fact, I had asked my middle son to write some things out for me for something I was working on. And it took me into his head about that whole stock market contest. And he had written out that I didn't really remember that he'd said it was going to be into stock. I thought we were actually going to get the money, but I didn't want to argue with Dad, so I went along with it. And so,
okay.
You don't want to bite the hand that feeds.
Yeah. So what kind of advice would you give if you had older kids or different, along the way? What kind of advice would you give those kids to, get involved in the stock market and kind of take control of their money?
Yeah, I'd say that the first step is just understanding that stocks are businesses, and it can be you can get easily mesmerized when you start to look at charts and you just look at how much money so and so made doing this. But when you get down to it, that's not how you make money in stocks. You make money slowly over a long time. But get kids to understand that it's businesses. And it's not this one big thing. It's not the stock market as this just big mysterious thing. It's a collection of individual stories. It's a collection of individual companies.
Yeah.
And that'll keep you out of a lot of trouble because you're more likely to stick to things you know and understand. And really, even if we don't lead kids to the stock market, to me, it's a conversation about business. And with what you guys do with the real estate, it helps them understand numbers better. Just having the conversation that this is a business and that's a business and these are the numbers behind it. And maybe what I've learned, having talked to a lot of groups of grown-ups and parents, but also kids, is I think that a lot of us take for granted compound interest. Once you get it, you almost take it for granted that everybody gets it. Maybe you thought everybody already understood it before you, but over and over again, I'll be speaking to a group and I'll think I've covered everything. Like, oh, we just, these folks know it all now. And then someone will say, well, what's compound interest? And I'll go, oh, we need to cover compound interest? Show it to them. And it blows their mind. And so it's really just seeing what money does over time. I think maybe if you're in finance, you take for granted how powerful it is and that not everybody really understands it.
For sure.
Yeah, no kidding. Because you actually, when you started out, you had 4 channels you said on your TV. And so getting just the ticker information was very difficult. So what you did was you manually mapped it out on a graph. Do you feel that physicality, which of course kids don't, there's an app for that, right? But you had to do it very physically, like map this all out, and you can't map the entire stock market. You had to focus on just what was cool for you, right? Who you're tracking. Do you feel that would still be a good exercise for kids?
Yeah, I don't know whether we can get kids to necessarily draw the charts themselves. I don't know that I would take them back that far because, but you're right. If they do, there is value in that. I feel like I did learn from that process, and even just writing out each day, what did the market close at, things like that. It helps you get a little bit more of a tangible feel to it. But would I take kids all the way back that far in the process? I don't know if I would or not. But what I would have them do is if you're really in this far in, where you're talking to kids at a level where you're really analyzing stocks, you're beyond the basics and you're into, you're making a pick. I like having them look at charts and look at multiple time frames so that they can see, all right, here's something zoomed way in where you're looking at maybe 3 months of data just on the screen, but let's also pull back out and let's look at a year, let's look at 5 years, and let's look at 10 years of data.
Because that can be a huge difference.
Yeah, it really does take you through maybe some of that mental process that you go through back when we were writing out our own charts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, that's smart. And do you have any advice for parents? Let's say they're parents of me. I have a 13-year-old. So and thankfully he's very good with money and cost, the idea of cost, and he has a savings account, but I'm not into stocks, his dad's not into stocks. So how would you start it with older kids to try to do that? Is it still the same process that you're outlining in your book?
Yeah, I would say talk to them about companies and say, let's have a conversation about public versus private, so that they understand there's certain things you can buy a stock in and there's certain things that you can't, and help them understand that. And then maybe the easiest way is to start with play money. That's how I started back in 7th grade. And to this day, there's still things that I simulate because I'm testing something. And what we did in our family is we started having a little contest, a play money contest. And it's a fun, engaging way with a 13-year-old especially, is to say, hey, you know what, let's have mom, dad, and you pick a stock or two and track it over however long and see who wins. Because that's a pain-free way to at least get them engaged and thinking about and just aware that the stock market is a thing. And maybe it takes them down the path of actually getting so interested in it that they want to invest, and that they, you never know with career paths, that sort of thing. But at the very least, it might make them a better consumer when they become old enough to save into their 401k or start their own business, or you can be a better consumer if you're educated, and keeps you from being taken advantage of potentially.
Yeah. That's interesting. Do you ever go over them with like index funds and things like that, or is that something you haven't done? Haven't opened yet?
That's probably a fail on my part, is I haven't really explained the concepts of indexing enough to my kids. And I don't know that my kids could tell you what a bond is. In my book, I cover bonds, and I try to give a real simple way to explain them, because they're really quite simple. People try to make them complicated. But that's probably a failure on my part with my kids, is they don't know the index side as much, and they don't know the bond side. And part of that is just, I've followed their interest level. If it were their favorite thing in the world, then they'd be much further into it. But maybe the point I'm trying to make with the book is that it doesn't have to be their favorite thing in the world to really help them be quite smart about what's really going on. My kids don't know indexes and that sort of thing, but they understand dividends, and they understand that Apple makes this much in earnings, and if they make more next year, then the stock price will probably go up. But if earnings go down, then the stock price probably won't.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important, because as soon as they get out of school and they get a job, a lot of times they offer a 401k or something like that, and they're faced with all these things. And most people, I remember when I got my first 401k, it's like, you're just picking one, and it's like, okay, well, this is my retirement, and I have no idea what I'm doing, yet this is supposed to set me up for my future and my retirement. So I think what you're doing is great. As kids, you're growing up, you're learning your basics, and how to live in the world. You're not teaching stocks. So I think that's really great that you're doing something like this. And even I think parents can even read this book too and get a ton out of it.
Are you kidding me? I'm about to buy this book, because half of the stuff y'all are talking about, I'm like, man, what is an index? What is that? And again, we're talking to the author, JJ Wenrich. Okay. So again, author of Teaching Kids to Buy Stock, Stories and Lessons for Grown-ups. And I've read the first several chapters of it, because you go onto Amazon, it's very easy to buy it, and we'll have all the links on it. But I'm reading through it going, I didn't know that. I think this is quite valuable, because, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I've, owned my own business for quite some time. We own Leafy Legal Services. I teach people to set up their businesses. I'm doing HR and other stuff, but, you don't have time as an adult. We all have our specialties. And I can be brilliant in telling you about talent acquisition management, protecting your real estate, or being an entrepreneur, understanding how the right structures will help protect your assets and set your family up for life. So I understand those structures, but stocks is a whole other monster out there. Friendly monster with a book like this. It seems a lot friendlier. But yeah, I think that it's not a kid's book. I think it's both kind of book right there.
Yeah. It's a sneaky tagline in there, stories and lessons for grownups, that a lot of parents think, oh, I'll just buy this, hand it to my kids, and then I can just sip my ties and be financially free. But it's actually, no, it's for mom and dad to read. And the way I wrote it was for the mom or the dad that really didn't want to learn about the stock market, but felt like, I probably should learn a little bit about it. Mm-hmm. And if you're a busy mom or a busy dad, reading kind of needs to be a release and not a task. And the goal of the book is, let's see if we can make this the release, but also something that helps you learn something. So I had a lot of I call them the mom books in mind as I wrote it. Some of these wonderful authors that tell their story, but do it in such an entertaining way. I think of like the Glennon Doyles of the world, and just try to build something that's telling the story about how to talk to your kids about money, and actually giving you the process to pick stocks and cover the gaps like bonds or indexes that I may have missed with my kids but need to be covered. So you can take it really as shallow or as deep as you want, and also stay awake.
I loved it. I found it quite engaging, and my eyes did not glaze over, because there are different types of people. I'm not a mathy sort of math. I'm a people person. So your ability, I'm going to just tell everybody, it's really well written. His ability to take a personal story as a kid, but then put the maths behind it. That's what I call anything that's remotely like that. The maths behind it, to where I'm like, oh, so that's how that works. So that's what they mean about that. And I'm not even through it, and I'm already thinking that. So I really think you did a great job, because it really caught my interest.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. Brian, I know Brian's much more technical because he's got an engineering background. So he's probably
I find, making things simple is great. I find that the simpler you can make it, the better you understand it. And so it's just a testament to your understanding how you can make something so simple that, people that aren't interested, it makes it fun. And I think that's super important, especially for people to feel like they can understand enough, so they feel like they know what they're doing in the stock market. So that's amazing.
Do you have like one takeaway you'd like to give our listeners today about something that you've learned, or something you think it's important right now for people, maybe besides get your book, which we want them to get your book, Teaching Kids to Buy Stocks, Stories and Lessons for Grownups. We do want them to get your book. But besides that, is there any tip or anything you can give our listeners today? Maybe something that's going on today, or something you're dealing with?
I'd say the biggest tip I can give you, besides save money monthly, that's the first tip. So I'll sneak two tips in here, is talk to your kids about money and what's going on with money. I'm not saying you want to transfer your own personal anxiety, if you have it, to your kids, but help them understand how much life costs. And whether if they're 5, it's one conversation. If they're 15, it's a different conversation. But have the conversation, because if you don't do it, it might not happen.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good one, because I know a lot of parents want to insulate their kids from money, especially if you're going through bad times. You don't want them to find fear. And then on the other hand, you have the parents who are like, no, you've got to learn. And the kids are so freaked out. They've got a poverty mindset by the time they're in high school, and they're unable to enjoy anything that they make. You have people that are just so saddled, they won't get credit for anything, or they won't think outside the box to make a leap on something because fear is holding them back. So either way, you don't want any of those extremes. So you want something healthier. So yeah, that's really great. Brian, did you have any other questions you wanted to grill him?
No, I think we should definitely give people the website to get the book though. So it's teachingkidstobustocks.com.
Right.
Also, you can get on Amazon as well. We'll put the links all at the bottom. And yeah, I mean, it's been a pleasure to have you on our podcast, JJ, and I'm excited of making sure everybody gets this book that doesn't know about the stock market. And I'm even going to get it, even though I do know quite a bit about the stock market, because I think you can always learn more, and the simplest terms usually are the best things to learn. And the more knowledgeable someone is, the simpler they make it. So definitely get the book, whether you're a parent or not. I think it's worthwhile to know. And so, thank you, JJ, for being on the call today.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me, and love what you guys are doing with your podcast. It's great. Congratulations on all of it.
Awesome.
Thanks. We're having fun.
All right.
Tammy,
Well, thank you, everybody.
Oh yeah, Tammy's gonna go.
Well, thank you so much, JJ, for being here today. And Brian and Jennifer, thank you as well for hosting the show today. We will include all of JJ's information in our show notes. You can also find us on iTunes, Stitchers, Google Play, YouTube, our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn channels, and so we will have all of that information about JJ. If you do have a question for JJ and you'd like to email it to me, I can relay it back to him. Just email me at Tammy, Tammy, at leafylegalservices.com, and I will make sure to relay that to JJ, or we can just go ahead and talk about it if you have any comments on our next episode. And we love hearing from you if you have any questions. So if you have anyone that you think would be a great guest for us, please also reach out to me by email. And we thank you again for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day. So signing off now. Bye-bye.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.